Hey, we've got a problem here.
So, what's the plan?
What's your plan?
What are your plans?
What's the plan?
What's the plan?
What's your plan?
What's your plan of action?
Plan.
What's the plan?
So, what is the plan?
Wait, I have a plan.
I have a plan.
I have a plan.
That's the plan.
I have a plan here.
This plan's gonna work.
Master Plan, Phase 1, Side A.
I love everything about your plan.
भाई इससे कहते हैं planning.
What's it say?
Well, it says, I love it when a plan comes together.
Welcome to the Young Person's Plan for the Planet broadcast 2. Emily,
Thanks for
welcome
having me.
to the program.
Thank you.
Fantastic to have you here today.
Great to be in Canberra.
Yeah. Now, what's brought you down to Canberra?
I've actually come here for university.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I believe you have a little bit of a secret. So, for the last 2 years, what have you been doing?
I've actually been part of the Plan for the Planet program at my school in Townsville.
Is
Yeah,
that right?
It is, yeah.
I actually already knew that, but that's okay. So we've got Emily Robson today, who's joined us from Townsville,
Yeah.
who's just come down to study. What are you studying at ANU?
I'm studying environment and sustainability. So
Is that connected at all with the work you've been doing?
just a little bit.
Just
yeah.
a little bit. Fantastic. So we've got Emily today and Fleone, one of your classmates.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Who's-
both did the program.
You both did the program, and you're both now at ANU.
Yes.
So you'll be joining Fleone and you'll be our guest speakers
Yeah.
today. That's
That's great.
absolutely fantastic. So we've got a pretty exciting day today. We're going to be going over a number of things. Firstly, we're going to be going over the whole discovery part of the program, the first phase, and we're going to be talking to Emily and Fleone about how they found that, because it's a bit challenging at first.
Yes.
Big task. Solve the world's problems,
Yeah.
as we saw.
Very simple.
But there is a plan. Yeah. And now, the second thing we're going to be going over is some of the SDG challenge projects and starting to look at how you develop those. But before we do that, the way we always start the program, Emily, is to acknowledge do our acknowledgement to country. Caring for country, because Australia, now I love doing this part because I had to adjust how long our Indigenous peoples have been in Australia, and I had to take it up from 50,000 to 65,000 years. That was the first part. So what we do always at the beginning is just acknowledge what we have in Australia. So we have the longest living culture in the world. But we also have the longest living sustainable culture in the world,
Yeah, very true.
65,000 years. And we did something interesting this week at ANU, or not this week, over the last month at ANU. We actually mapped the SDGs against our Indigenous culture.
Wow.
Guess what? They got a tick on all 17
Amazing.
SDGs. So we know we have an incredibly powerful culture with our Indigenous culture. So we always like to acknowledge that at the beginning. Today's program, as I said, what we're going to be doing is going over that discovery phase, and we'll be looking to your insights and Fleone's on that and how you tackle that. We're also going to hear from one of our teams in the beginning as well, Essington, and how they tackled each of the SDGs. We're going to be then looking at the SDG challenge projects.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that's come out over or particularly from the first year and the second year in the program, is many students saying, look, we've done the actual plan, that's great.
Yeah.
However, what we want to do is now start getting stuck into doing something.
Yeah.
So now the program has two parts, the planning part and also the challenge project part, and we've teamed up with Curtin University on that. And what we're going to be doing is hearing from some of our students at Shenton College who test ran this last year, and they're going to talk about two of their projects. So today's really about setting up that discovery phase and also starting to tune into the delivery part of the program.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do now is just take everybody through the important parts to remember on the Discovery and the SDG projects, and then what we'll be doing is sitting down and talking to you guys about how you did it.
Sounds great.
Yeah, so you've got the experts here to tell you how to do it all. So let's just look at what Discovery actually was about and is about. We jump onto the next slide. What we see is the most important part of Discovery. Now we've got Brian Schmidt, who is the Vice-Chancellor of ANU. He's also has been on the board of Questacon, and he's one of the big supporters of the program. Now the other thing about Brian is he's a Nobel laureate, and he's a Nobel laureate for his discovery. So it's really appropriate to have his words of wisdom as we start looking at the discovery part. And what Brian discovered with part of his team is the universe is expanding, which is pretty significant for us to understand. And so what Brian said is encouraging you as young people to contribute to the future of the planet's essential, and getting you to be the designers and implementers of the sustainable future Earth is absolutely critical for our future. So we thought we'd start off the discovery part by getting a quote from one of our great discoverers who's right behind the program. The next thing we're going to do is talk about what actually is involved in discovery. So let's look at the next component. Discovery is the first part of the overall program, which goes through discover, build and prioritise, combine, engage and communicate, deliver and collaborate. So they're all of the key components of the program, and you can see how the framework for the actual build comes from the Sustainable Development Goals. Our next slide talks about how that now starts to fit with the delivery of the plan. We go from Sustainable Development Goals to building the plan to actually delivering the plan. And that's called a Balance for the Planet program, the challenges, which is part of the Curtin program. Now the reason I've put this up here is we're actually blending the two of those components together, so that the build is the work you are doing with the team in Pimlico. The deliver is the work that Shenton did, and we're putting it all together. Because if you think about it, it starts to get really exciting. Because what we have is a national plan for Australia. We now have the state plans. This year, we'll be focusing on the local government areas. There's 500 of those in Australia. So we've got quite a bit of work to do to actually build those. Now, one thing I was interested in talking to you about, Emily, is you were saying something that was really useful for you was actually looking at how the SDGs applied to your area.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So when I did the program, when I first started it, I was thinking about these big environmental issues that seems like a really big problem. And, you know, it's a little bit daunting trying to come up with a plan to solve that. And so this program really helped me think directly about how these are affecting my local area, where I live, the community that I'm a part of, and how it's really just so interconnected. And I think it's really easy for us to overlook. So I did the area of poverty, and I didn't really realise how many people were in poverty in my local area until I did this program, and that was really an eye-opening experience for me. So I think a really important thing of this program is really looking at the local area, because if you can change the way that we think about sustainable development in your local area, then that then affects the states, and then that affects the country, and then it's just a flow-on effect.
It's really true, and part of the planning at the local area and the national area and the state area is because of the strategic planning process we use. Now this is really interesting, because if I go up to anybody in academia and talk about strategic planning, most of them won't understand that.
Yeah.
If it's not a thing that's really familiar to many people in academia. And yet it's one of the tools that we can use to bring all of the plans together.
Definitely.
Because when I worked in the corporate world, we'd have a global plan, cascaded down to into a national plan, and then local plans. And that's what we've actually developed. So because we use the same format and structure, all of the plans actually fit together.
Yeah, I think it also mirrors the fact that we have such a big issue and there's not just one solution to the problem. And at your state, local and national levels, you're going to have slightly different tweaks and different areas that you want to focus on, different people you want to target, and that shows how the plan can be different, but how they all still fit in together and work towards one goal.
It's really true, and it's really interesting too, because we've got 17 goals. But they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things you found.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. So if we jump onto the next slide, what we can see is the key components of this discovery. And I'm really interested to talk with you at Floney later on about how you found this process. So with the whole program, it all boils down to really filling in 2 pages.
Yeah.
And that builds
Definitely.
the plan, which looks pretty simple, but there's a fair bit of work that goes into the research, isn't
there?
Yeah,
there is a lot.
So the actual first part is filling in what we call the discovery form, which is the form you have on the slide in front of you. And the task is fairly simple. You have to look at 10 things that are already happening in your local area and 10 things that need to happen. And then you need to prioritise each of those on how important and how urgent it is. And that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. No, I bet it was a little bit harder than just filling in the form. You had to do a lot of research behind that.
A lot. I think it's very easy to skip over the part about discovering the 10 things that happen in your area. I think you may at the start think, oh, yeah, that's really easy, I can do that. But I know that was something that took me a long time to do. It's a lot of research, and it's a lot of thinking more about not necessarily straightforward things that people are doing in terms of poverty. It's also other things. So looking at how like homeless shelters is also actually helping poverty, and how having educations in schools, how that also links. So that's actually something that's already happening. And for me, it was really an eye-opening experience learning that actually lots of people around like the area that I was working in, from Rockhampton above, were doing very similar things, but they didn't know, and they didn't know how to work together and connect. So that was really how then I built my next section on what we need to implement.
Okay, that's really interesting. So what you found when you looked at what was already happening is that there are a lot of things happening that were similar, but people didn't know other people were doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really important. So this is part of the reason we have a plan.
Yes.
So that the reason we have plan and projects is because what we try and do is make sure all the projects always link back to the plan. And the reason for that is then it's all coordinated and everybody else can see what everybody else is doing and learn from that. And if there's overlap, actually work together rather than bump heads. Yeah, exactly. So that's actually a really good example. So that's why we have planning first and then the projects. So that's great, Emily. We can pick Floney's brain a little bit more on that one as well. Okay, if we jump on to the next slide, what we do is 10 things that are already happening and 10 things that need to happen. How did you find the 10 things that need to happen? That's tricky.
So what I thought about was I've looked at how interconnected the ways that things that were already happened. So I said, okay, so if someone or a company is doing this, why isn't why isn't it working? What are the limitations of that program? And then I tried to bring that in. So a lot of times we had these programs, but people weren't aware of them or they weren't sure what to do. So a lot of my areas of what we need to do was around education and increasing awareness and just an overall understanding of what we want. Because we're all from different communities, we've all been brought up different ways, and everyone has a slightly different understanding of like what sustainability is or like how they want to connect with the land. So coming to a point where we can all understand what the common goal is was something that I thought was really valuable and something that we needed to do in terms of coming to a sustainable future.
So a lot of that thinking came out of your discovery work.
Definitely, yep.
Perfect. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide and just have a look at the work that Essington did on each of the goals. So we're going to have a look at a video where they're going to talk a little bit about how they went about this, and then we're going to talk to yourself and Floney about your whole experience with the program. So let's look at the team from Essington. They started out at exactly the same time as you guys, and this is their experience when they started out the program. Is why don't we talk a little bit about the projects, and then we'll go on to that. So let's look at the next slide, which talks about the actual project part of that. So this comes out of the discovery. So you learn about what to do, and then you build the plan, and then the next slide is really about turning that into projects. So what we like all the schools to do, if it's your first year, is to actually firstly develop a plan, because that allows the coordination to happen, which is one of the challenges that you identified out there. And it's a big challenge because when I looked at the issue of sustainability, what I saw is a lot of projects out there and a lot of them not very connected. That's what you found as well? So part of the planning process is to get things connected. And we're able to do that with the strategic planning process. Definitely. And what I found when I worked in the corporate world is they did that really well. So if I ran off and I was in Australia and did a project in Australia and didn't link that up to the overall plan, I'd be in trouble. So what we did is take that whole way of doing a global plan, translating it down into local projects as part of the Plan for the Planet process. So it's important that for the first year, if you focus on one thing, focus on the plan. Now, schools are able to then do projects if they like as well as. So do the plan first, and then you can get on to a number of projects if you like. Now, if you've already done your plan, say Pimlico, then what you can do is focus on projects, or the new students coming through can actually focus the plan this year on the local government areas, and the alumni students can work on projects. So there's a number of ways you can mix and mash, putting it together this year, a number of options which are all about learning about strategic planning and also learning about the whole area of turning plans into action. So let's look at the next slide. This one is really about that delivering part. So the way to take your plan and turn it into projects is prioritise, look at all of the areas that you've established and pick 3 SDGs as your priority ones, and then look at how to turn those into projects. Now the way you can do that is through a program that we have which is with Curtin University, and that's called the Balance the Planet program. So when you send in all of your email addresses, which allow us to put it into a secure website, we load that up into the Plan for the Planet program and the Balance of the Planet program, so you have access to both of those project opportunities this year. So if we go through to the next slide, what we'll see there is the opportunity to now hear from some of our students. So first of all, we're going to hear from Essington, which is the group we had up there before. Then we're going to do our talk, and then we're going to hear from our Shenton students talking about some of the projects that they've actually put together. So let's try that again. Let's hear from Essington.
Hi, I'm Tendai and a member of the Darwin Plan for the Planet team. My focus area for the Darwin Ecozone is poverty. 25,397 Territorians live below the poverty line. 50% of children live in poverty. 1 in 4 pensioners live in or close to poverty. 25% of households located in disadvantaged areas of Darwin are food insecure. Charities which only exist to meet a need are experiencing an alarming increase in demand. Charities are having to turn away 134 people a month on average, 72 whom are children. The government needs to support charities and the people of Darwin to eradicate poverty by 2030.
Hi, my name is Sarav Sebastian, living in Darwin, and my focus for the Darwin Ecozone is hunger and water security. In Darwin, there are 42,132 people who experience hunger and food insecurity annually, and half of this are children. That makes 1 in 10 who are hungry. There are a few charities that provide food assistance in Darwin, such as Food Bank NT and Vinnie's Darwin. However, they are unable to cope with the large amount of requests. There has been an 11% increase in requests for assistance. It is estimated that 30% of all food products are thrown away because they are unsaleable, and 25% of those living in disadvantaged areas of Darwin are food insecure. Food Bank also provides 60 million meals to 2,400 charities and 100 schools per year. In a survey conducted by Food Bank in 2014, it was discovered that 77% of the public is unaware of the hunger problem in Darwin. The protection of potable water is the sole responsibility of Power and Water, and as a result, no development or uncontrolled public access is permitted within the catchment. To combat this, more charities could be created to combat hunger in Darwin, and more facilities could be made to maintain the cleanliness of water in Darwin. As well as that, education is a must, so that more awareness can be raised about this huge concern in Darwin.
Hi, my name is Luca and I'm researching how Darwin could be a more sustainable city. I'm looking into improvements that could be made and what is already being done to aim for a more sustainable city in the Darwin area. Public transport is widely used in Darwin, especially by students. More buses could be employed and the standard of the buses should be raised. The more buses Darwin have, the more efficient it could be, which will encourage more people to use them. There's a high level of crime in Darwin, and in my opinion, more streetlights should be installed in streets and police services should patrol more often at night. There needs to be more government housing due to a large amount of people living on the streets. Lastly, improvements in waste disposal is an important area where Darwin needs to look into for a more cleaner and sustainable city.
Hi, my name is Danica and I'm doing research on biodiversity in the Darwin region. So far, one of the biggest impacts on Darwin's biodiversity is the spawning of the cane toad. They pose a threat to our biodiversity as most wildlife that comes in contact with them suffers immensely, causing a loss in abundance. The biodiversity living in Darwin Harbour is also in danger, with around 11 billion litres of part-treated sewage dumped into it annually. Human and animal waste, litter and fertiliser from lawns are also finding its way into the Darwin Harbour through dozens of stormwater drains. The Environment Centre NT have been trying to find out ways to restore the Darwin Harbour back to its original clean state, and Frogwatch organisation is also trying to address the cane toad issue in the most humane way possible.
Hi, I'm Gemma and I'm doing my research on gender equality and inequalities for the Darwin region. Currently, Darwin is getting involved in gender equality by holding the Women's March. However, we need to create stronger guidelines to ensure that women aren't at a disadvantaged position in the workplace through pay gap, promotions, sporting, discriminations, or even assault. In 2016, there were 3,858 reports of domestic violence and 277 of sexual assault in the NT. These figures are very large and are hopefully able to be reduced by strengthening the networks of domestic violence and sexual assault around Darwin in order to raise this awareness. There are 200 refugees that come to live in Darwin per year. In the future, they should receive more government support for employment and living so that they are able to live happily in a welcoming environment. They also require greater assistance in attaining employment in the Darwin region.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm doing my research on sustainable energy in Darwin. Sustainable energy is needed for a clean and sustainable future. During my research, I've come across two main sustainable energy movements. Darwin's privately owned airport has recently built a $13 million solar plant and is estimated to reduce the airport's energy costs by $1.5 million a year. It provides enough energy to power around 1,000 homes. The Darwin government has built a renewable energy facility in Shaw Bay, and it cleverly utilises the methane created from landfills as its fuel, removing the methane from the atmosphere and burning it for energy. It provides enough electricity to power 1,200 homes.
Hi, my name is Marcia and I'm researching quality education in the Darwin area. In Darwin, there are a high number of students enrolled across all schools. I have found that the number of Indigenous students enrolled in Darwin schools is significantly different to Indigenous students enrolled around Australia. Depending on the type of school, for example, Catholic, government and private schools, change the percentage of Indigenous students enrolled. Catholic and private schools have a very low percentage of enrolled Indigenous students, being from 2 to 5%, whereas government schools have around 30 to 50% Indigenous students enrolled. There are 25 projects happening around the Northern Territory at the moment, most in the Darwin and Palmerston region, to improve student engagement and attendance.
Hi, my name is Eva and I'm researching peace, justice and strong institutions. I'm looking into the justice system within Darwin and what improvements can be made in Darwin to reduce crime, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development and provide justice to all. Darwin has many legal aid organisations such as NAJA, Top End Women Clinic and the NT Legal Aid Commission. These provide free and confidential legal services to Darwin citizens. Darwin has recently introduced a new task force to combat crime. This task force is targeted at youth crime and crime prevention. I'm also looking into how Darwin is an inclusive society.
Hello, my name is Christina and I'm researching the economic sustainability in Darwin. We've got a young and dynamic population made up of people from all over Australia and the world, attracted by the peaceful summer lifestyle and the booming economy. Low commodity prices have taken their toll on companies operating in the top end, with 6 mines and an aluminium refinery closing in the past 3 years. Those digging up iron ore and manganese have been the hardest hit, while zinc, lead and bauxite miners are among the ones struggling on. Sustainable development is not about giving priority to environmental concerns. It is about incorporating environmental assets in the economic system to ensure the sustainability of the economic system.
It's really exciting to see everything that the students are learning in the program and all about the SDGs and sustainability learning. Welcome to the program.
Great to be here.
Fantastic. You were saying before it's pretty amazing starting the program 2 years ago and now being starring.
Yeah, that was it's kind of surreal. I know. I'm not like, it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it really is kind of exciting to have started somewhere, seeing people up on the stage, like talking, interacting with individuals like yourself, and then suddenly being here myself. So that's great. It's a great opportunity.
Fantastic. Now, one thing you were saying earlier, and as we're sort of talking, Emily, was all about just looking at those students and talking about what they've learned and discovered.
Yeah.
And now you thinking back to where you started, and I'm going to ask the same of you, Flanny, and where you are now in terms of knowledge.
Yeah.
What do you think are the main things that you've learned and have also influenced your way of thinking?
Yeah. So when I started the program, I wasn't really sure how to tackle a lot of problems, and when I have gone through the program, my actual way of thinking about how to deal with things has really changed, and I've gotten a critical mindset and learning that, and that's been incredibly valuable and something that I take into everyday life. And it's like when you have given a problem, it's like not trying to just find a temporary solution, trying to find something that was really going to impact and have a long-lasting effect in the way that you want it to. So when I worked with poverty, it wasn't just about how are we going to get the people out of poverty who are in it now. It's like, how are we going to stop it in the future? How are we targeting the families that aren't yet in poverty but will soon get there? So that way of like understanding the problem on a deeper level and trying to really critically analyse and problem solve was a skill that I will have for the rest of my life and something that I really have taken out of the program.
It's really interesting, Emily, because one of the things we've emphasised is all the way through the program is in fact scientific thinking, critical thinking. And that's essential. And I remember going to one of the schools and saying, what's the biggest problem you had? And they said, the kids who didn't come in with fact-based opinions. They just had opinions. And we had to work to make sure everything was fact-based. I'm interested, Dani, in your experience from when you started and now where you are 2 years later and studying at university. What do you think have been the major influences?
So that was one of the main ones where you didn't come in, that your input into the project or into the plan wasn't just your personal opinion. It was finding out what the research said, what the facts said. But at the same time, I think the most effective thing about the plan for me personally over the 2 years was that you attacked any issue, be it sustainability, be it a business like the corporate world. You attacked it from a business point of view. It's just everyday business. You know what you want to do, you have targets to achieve, and you attack it. So you split it into little components, and you attack it so that you can make it happen. So you look at it in a way as if it is, in fact, a business plan, not just a big issue that you want to talk about or that you talk about with big people, but nothing's actually going anywhere and you don't actually know how to deal with it, but instead you're looking at it as a business plan. So I thought that was very interesting because I've never looked at it, I'd never seen that perspective or that side to sustainability. And I thought it was a novel idea to look at it like that.
Look, it's really interesting. And my next question is, when you went from when you started, because what we did is throw you in the deep end. And I was explaining to Emily and as we were coming across, because it all developed so quickly, we got the funding for it. I was about 2 weeks ahead of you, writing out what to do next, and then you were all coming in and doing it brilliantly. So I have to say, we didn't know whether it'd work, whether you'd be able to pick up concepts like that. And I explained many times to my colleagues that you actually picked it up a lot faster than many of my business colleagues in the past. And there's a reason for that. One, because you're both brilliant, and all of our students have been absolutely brilliant, but also that you don't have a lot of the baggage that often you have if you're in the corporate world or if you're government, you're thinking about when the next votes are coming from. If you're in community, it's a whole lot of other agendas, but you're coming in very fresh, so you're actually the ideal group to be designing the future, but you've also got a vested interest in what the future is going to look like. But I'm really interested in how it felt for you to go from that stage where you started, you thought, what have I let myself into? I've got to solve all the world's problems. And when you saw that actual plan at the end of the year, that glossy plan for the planet, what was it like for you?
For me, I think it was really a point where I was like, wow, like everything that I've put, all the effort I put in, and not only just myself, but like my colleagues and teammates in my school and everyone from across Australia put in, we came up with like a 20-page document of what we can do. And I think that just showed how it's such a big problem, but if you take it at different angles and you come in different ways, you can come up with amazing solutions and come up with that final plan. And that was just an amazing feeling. It was a very empowering feeling as well, knowing like what you could do. And I think coming in, I really as well like agreed liked the business style, because when I thought about it, I was like, oh, like this is a really interesting way to think about it, and it just shows how interconnected sustainability is, and there's not just one way of thinking out of it. So thinking of, okay, this is our way that we're coming at it, and it's very interconnected, therefore the solutions I need to think of can't just be about the environment or about our society. They need to be about both of them. And coming up with a plan that integrated like business, economics, environment, and society all into one document was just amazing.
How about for you, Really?
Funny. Yeah. So for me, it was similar, but at the same time, I found that doing the plan, as we split into groups and we attacked like the tiny aspects, like each little region, you find that even the biggest problem, you could narrow it down to few key statements, and then you could attack it by looking at the little, like just your ecozone, your tiny area, and you find that the reason that it's such a big problem is that the same little problems that you find in your ecozone are common throughout multiple ecozones. And that's what's making it build into this big, massive issue that you think you need to solve in one solution, so everything has one solution, but it really doesn't. It's multifaceted, multiple little solutions to multiple little problems, which can, at the end, when you come out with, like, as you said, 20-page document, is actually addressing issues throughout society, not just one, like not just food and food security and water security, but that's addressing injustice, equality among women and men, and like all problems and energy, like resources and energy, and throughout Australia, like all problems.
Were you surprised when the book came out?
Yeah, I was shocked. I was like, wow, we did this. This is possible, and we weren't an army of people. We were a small unit of people working towards a common goal, and it was effective because it was a business strategy. Yeah.
And you mentioned teamwork in there, Loni. So it wasn't about individuals, it was about teams. And then you partnered with some of the other schools to actually pull the national plan together. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the national plan, so that's, as I said before, the most, I could say shocking, but at the same time, the most interesting fact was the same problems were common. You would think each ecozone would have its completely different different problems, but they really didn't. It was all similar in some way or another, and then you just needed to pull out the key main concepts that were behind the problems or the solutions that were there. And another interesting thing was most of the solutions that when you're doing the discovery phase, you think you need to find all the answers yourself, that you need to come up with new novel ideas, but you don't. There are actually people who have done the research, who have done the time to find out things that are already there, but it's just that the information's not out there for everyone. So for example, the project, like multiple people are doing it, but they don't know about it between each other. So when you find it, you can bring it together and realize that there are things that are already being done, which you can find and get information that's already there, and you just need to put it in the plan so that it gives access to more people about it. And that's like one of the most important, like that was what I found amazing about the national plan.
It's really interesting because it's the thing I found in business, that most of the answers are already there. You know, you're thrown a difficult problem and you suddenly find that if you look around, if you go through your discovery, and it's why the discovery phase is so important, because if you do your research up front, when you come to do the actual build, the one-page build, a lot of the answers are already there.
And it's not easy doing that discovery phase. Like it's definitely takes a lot of effort, and you come up with a lot of
use your brain.
You come up with a lot of problems along the way. Like I know when I was doing my research, I was working in the Ecozone 9, which was from Rockhampton to the top of Queensland, but every time I did my research, I kept finding a lot of information around the metropolitan areas around Brisbane, and it was really hard for me to find lots of information around my local area. So it wasn't only just like, it also taught me how to research and like how to target those areas. And when I tried to contact like groups and like trying to find out what they were doing, lots of them wouldn't respond to me because I was just a high school student. So that's another problem that you come across, and it can be really hard, but you just have to keep going, just finding new ways to talk to different people. And I think that was another thing that we found when we were talking to other schools, was that it can be quite difficult sometimes to agree upon just 4 options.
Yeah, that was a bit of a challenge, wasn't it? Yeah. How did you find that Pareto principle, breaking it down to the 4 things? Did you find that once you had the 4 things, that addressed a lot of the issues that you'd identified?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's really about, like what Loni said, pulling those key ideas from the 10 solutions, because a lot of them will be quite similar, and it's pulling the really ones that are addressing ways in different ways. So maybe a short-term solution, then a long-term solution, then one that will help change awareness and education. So that's how I went across mine, and what we tried to do in the national plan was trying to get those different angles and different solutions in different time zones and in different areas.
What we're going to have this year is a really exciting additional element, which is we have 30 schools in Mauritius. We have 10 schools in, in Singapore, plus all of the schools in Australia and probably up to 20 schools in India and maybe the Seychelles and a few other countries. So it's going to be really interesting seeing all of their inputs coming in. Did you find that interesting, the different perspectives and the cultural perspectives? Was that something you observed as well?
Yeah, so what I would think, as be it from India, Singapore, I think in Australia, what we all have in common is the environment we actually live in, like the tropical environment. And so I believe many of the issues that we face in Australia would be common throughout all those countries. And I think it would be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think it will be a lot of similar things. Similar issues, similar things such as be it domestic violence, be it environmental problems like water security, like droughts, floods. We all face it all over the world, and I think it'll be interesting to watch it play out. But I do definitely believe that it's going to be very similar, and also that's also what I found throughout doing the national plan, that even though Australia we have from semi-arid climate to tropical climate, many of the issues still remain in the core, in its essence, it remains the same, and it's about support from other government, be it from the government or from other institutions, where we need to work together to create a more secure foundation for whatever the issue is. For example, food security. A lot of we see that we need support from the government, like farmers or agricultural things that are going on. They need the backing of the government to ensure that mines or other industries aren't taking over the water they need to do their farming and etc. So yeah, that's something.
Good planning.
Good planning.
Yeah,
so,
and good research.
Yeah,
so
good research.
One of the things you've stressed is how you learnt how to research.
Yeah.
It's probably going to come in handy as you do your courses.
Yes, and something I found was that it's really valuable having an actual plan at the end that gets distributed to a lot of people, because a lot of people, in different countries may not know a lot about the problems that are going on and may not even think that students are coming up with solutions to these problems. And it's all about just giving that information, more access to more people. And I think that's really important, because if you don't have access to it, then...
It's interesting, because in Mauritius they printed 1,000 copies of the plan. That could be something that we could do this year, and they send it to every politician. Now that we're going to have state plans as well as a national plan, that's something we can look at this year.
Yeah.
We're going to have to finish up now, but look, that's been fantastic, and I suspect we might be able to get you back again to talk about some of your other experiences. Thank you so much for that. We're going to now look at a video of some of the students who've turned some of these plans into action from Shenton College. We're going to have a quick look at that. Then we're going to just do a quick wrap up and let you get out and do some work. So let's hear from Shenton.
Helios is an app designed to provide students with useful resources and advice on studying and healthy eating to encourage students to stay organised and well.
The Helios team aims to ultimately help improve the state of Shenton College students' mental and physical health by providing them with necessary digital resources that will benefit them.
We, as the Helios team, have used the design thinking process to create a prototype that is useful for the target user.
After interviewing numerous students, the Helios team discovered that almost 90% of students wanted to be more organised, and that being unorganised for schoolwork was one of the leading causes of stress for students.
With this information in mind, we started thinking and ideating for solutions of our defined problem of how might we improve Shenton College students' mental well-being by providing them with the appropriate resources in order to make ideal study and dietary choices while also encouraging fundamental organisational skills.
From here, the Helios team came up with the idea of creating an app designed for students that would provide them with easy access to advice from the Helios community, along with study tips and tools for their own personal use.
Helios includes many useful features that will help to improve student mental and physical health by limiting stress from their school and home life. These features include
organisational tools such as schedules and checklists,
an accessible recipe book that would inspire healthier diets, articles written by teachers, professionals or students, a chat room which would be accessible to students to contact teachers and friends easily whenever they had concerns about upcoming assessments.
Helios is an app that has been created for students by students, and we, the Helios team, believe that it will transform the current state of student organisation at Shenton College for the better.
How cool is that? So
Amazing.
those students took some of those ideas and have actually turned it into an app to help students in health.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So let's now look at what are the next steps for you as schools. The first opportunity we've talked about is to collaborate, not only within your school but with other schools. So if you'd like to be part of the mentoring program, both within Australia and internationally, let us know. The second thing is just remember what skills you're learning. You're learning about the Sustainable Development Goals, but as Emily and Floney were talking about, you're learning about STEM skills, how to apply good research and thinking and evaluation. Challenge-based learning, that's all about you getting thrown in the deep end and working out, even if you've got a massive problem, you can solve it by breaking it down. That links into strategic planning and then the global citizenship, which is really looking at how to work together. And we'll have a real opportunity to develop that this year with the other schools. And then finally, the SDG projects, challenge projects, will be all about turning plans into action. So that's what's on this year. The alumni projects will be around challenge projects, international mentoring, the international plan. So we started that when we were in Mauritius. We've got a chance to now build that out into the first international plan. The plan for the planet Mars, you probably haven't heard about that, but there's a chance to do a project on Mars, designing the first city around the SDGs, and finally we focus on gender equality. So if any of the teams are interested in that, let us know. Next steps, make sure your school and students that we have all of your email addresses for the new students so that we can include you on the actual registration for the two websites, the Plan for the Planet website and the Balance the Planet website, and also that you're getting all the YPP mail communications which tell you about these broadcasts, the latest developments, etc. Get started on your research and development phase, your discovery phase, and also on your SDG projects. And finally, tune into the next Questacon broadcast, which will be in a month's time, and we might even be able to get you both back. What do you reckon?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we've got to pick your brains a little bit more about how to make this happen, because we've got the build phase next time, which is where we built the actual plans. So that'll be really interesting to learn how you did that. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us from India, Singapore, Australia and Mauritius. And we're looking forward to a couple of more countries actually kicking in over the next months or so. So thanks again, and look forward to seeing you next time.